Remember a few months ago when we talked about graphics card prices and how crazy they had gotten? This was all the way back in April, and what I would regard as like the peak of this second wave of mining craziness and silicon shortages and all these other contributing factors to extremely expensive graphics card prices both in the new and used markets. Well, in this video, we're going to reassess all 64 of those cards. We're going to perform our value analysis the same way we did before and see how prices have changed over time. A lot of people are saying the graphics card prices have been slowly dropping in the used market, and we're going to find out if that's really the case. Stay with me. To get rid of that annoying activation watermark, hop on over to VIP SCD Key and purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for fractions of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, receive your key in seconds, and activate your OS here. Bye bye watermark. And be sure to use our new offer code SKGS for a sweet discount. So without further ado, let's jump right into the data. And this is it right here, folks. This is the juice box. Now I am covering the far left series of columns. The title says 3D Mark Time Spy mean graphics card scores at MSRP. So all this does essentially is juxtapose MSRP and scores that we gather from the public 3D Mark Time Spy database. Now these scores you're about to see are median scores. So for each card, you have a certain number of data points, right? These are the different entries. Everyone, that has a 3080 that runs a 3D Mark Time Spy score, that entry will be cataloged in their database, and then 3D Mark takes all of those scores for that particular card and creates, well, they call it like a weighted mean, but I asked for clarification and they said that this is more like a median because they're rolling out extreme outliers, especially in the cases where extreme overclocking yields very, very high scores that are unrealistic for most users. And that's what you're seeing here. So you've got the score column, right? And this is in descending order. So the highest graphics card score in 3D Mark Time Spy was an RTX 3090 at 19,858. We're going to compare that to the MSRP, which was $14.99 in this case, and then we're going to create a value, and that value is simply a ratio of score divided by MSRP. That gives us a ranking, and the lower ranking is actually going to be worse in this case, so don't be fooled if you see a ranking of 2 or 1. That's bad. You want a higher value, so you want to be ranked the closest to 64. So you can see, for instance, the RTX 3060 Ti with a score of 11,933 and an MSRP of $399 gives us the highest ranked score, 64, and a value of almost 30. Now, I did not take into account back in April the RTX 3060. I believe when I was gathering a lot of this data, it was not released yet. So that's why it's not here. The 3060, debatably even a better value card. I haven't crunched the numbers, but it's going to be up there. But for all intents and purposes, the 3060 Ti is one of the best in this list, but again, we're assuming MSRP, and if you've been looking at any price anywhere recently, you're not going to find it for $400. It's just not going to happen. So we've got many other cards to look at here. You can see the Titan V, right? I mean, $3,000, great, but it's only a little bit better than the 3060 Ti, so that's why it has a really low value score. Some other kind of average ones, RX 590, that's got the score of 4772 at an MSRP of 279. You can see it's 1710. Now this chart here is obviously biased towards newer cards because in general, as tech advances, you tend to get better value with every generational leap, right? So if you compare Pascal to Maxwell value, all prices equal, Pascal's going to be the better value than Maxwell. If it's not, something's pretty wrong. Now this next chart I'm going to show you actually looks at prices from back when I was gathering data when we released the video in April. Now I have it listed as April 2021 when this data was gathered, but it was actually gathered a bit earlier than that. It took a few weeks to collect all this data back when I was first ranking everything. So it says April, just know that it's a little before that, but early 2021 circa. And here we are, so check this out. So I have every graphics card ranked originally by MSRP in value from best to worst. So the 3060 Ti, remember, was the best value card at MSRP, but you can see when we account for sale price on eBay, and this is average sale price, the most recent 10 sales that I could find that were legitimate, that did not involve broken or defective cards sold for parts, etc., but legitimate cards that actually worked. You can see that they were selling on average back then for almost $1,300. Now this reassessed value brings it down to just 9 from, remember a bit earlier, it was, you can see in this chart right here, it was almost 30. So that kind of leap is not good, and that tells us that the 3060 Ti is not so good a value anymore when you take into account actual eBay sale prices, which is what ESP stands for. Now, some of the better value cards back in early 2021 included the R9 380X, which only had a score in 3D Mark Time Spy, a median score of 3020, but they were selling consistently at the time for around 120 bucks or so. So you get a value of 25, which rivals that of the original 3060 Ti value at MSRP, and that's why this one is ranked in green. So this would be one of the better value cards. We're not looking at raw performance, okay? This is not a raw performance analysis. We're looking at performance per dollar. That ratio is super important here. I wouldn't recommend you try playing 4K AAA titles with an R9 380X, but if you're looking for good bang for your buck, relatively speaking, so this accounts for all graphics cards being sold at the these crazy prices most of the time in 2021, relatively speaking, this is a good deal. Okay, that's what it means. Now, if you compared this price right here, 120 bucks, to a year ago, these cards were selling for quite frequently under $100. So this wouldn't be a good deal if that's how you're comparing things. But all this price says, and this corresponding value here, is that compared to the other cards in this chart, at these listed values at this current point in time, which again was early 2021, this R9 380X was actually a good deal. And we're going to see if more recently, around August 2021, if this in fact still holds or if this price has gone up or down, and of course changed the value. The median scores I didn't reassess because cards at large aren't getting much worse in terms of performance over time. And since most people were already benchmarking these 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't expect most of the scores to change this late in the game. Now, another great card in early 2021 from, again, a value perspective was the R9 Fury X, which was selling on average for about 200 bucks. Many of you pointed out this might have been because the Fury X included the AIO, right? And those AIOs often fail after 4, 5, 6 years. Who knows? It's kind of a game of Russian roulette, really. So that might be why the price was so cheap. But if you were willing to take on that gamble, you could get a pretty great value card. Again, with respect to other cards in this list at around the same time period. A couple bad cards, just going to run through those real quick. The Titan RTX was pretty awful. So that was a 6.22. And the GT710 was 3.84. I think this was our worst performer here. You can see it only scored 192 in 3D Mark Time Spy, and yeah, $50. I mean, that's a pretty big ripoff. When you compare it to, say, the GTX 750 Ti here, 750 Ti scored about 10 times higher. Well, not 10 times higher. It was 192, so about 6, 7 times higher, but it's only twice the price. So that's why the 750 Ti is ranked higher, 12.82, than the GT710 at a 3.84. So you're getting 4 times the value, more or less, with the 750 Ti at this current price. I know this may be a lot to take in for some of you, and the numbers can be a bit, especially on the right side of this chart, the numbers can be a bit ominous looking. The numbers on the right are for a separate analysis that I'll go through later for standard deviation and creating a normal distribution curve. And that'll just help me kind of visualize things for my audience a bit better at the end of the video. But for now, we're just looking at the value, which is, again, simply a ratio of performance and price. And instead of using MSRP this time around, we're just using the average sale price on eBay. Now, this chart right here is the meat and potatoes of this video. We're going to answer the question, have graphics card prices dropped in mid-2021 by analyzing this chart? And this data actually took quite a bit of time to gather, believe it or not, creating averages, filtering out the mining cards that are valued a bit less. Again, the cards that don't have display outs and things like that. Of course, I omitted those because those aren't relevant to gamers. I also omitted, again, the cards that are either defective or just being sold for parts. Maybe it was just coolers of certain cards. You want to get rid of all those because, again, you can't game with just a cooler. So the RTX 3060 Ti, let's start here, for example. Score didn't change, again, 11,933. We have an ESP, though, of 950. Now, how did this change with respect to what we saw earlier in 2021? Well, ESP earlier was $1,300. So the 3060 Ti has definitely come down since early 2021, but the value is still highlighted in yellow. So this is a conditional formatting technique here, and it's going to compare all these different values against each other. The better values are going to be highlighted in a darker shade of green, the worst values in a darker shade of red. Now, an example of a card that is not a great value as of August 2021 is the Radon 7. You can see the score has not changed. Again, this is the same score that you saw in the two previous charts, but the ESP is now $1,400, giving us a value of 6.33. That is awfully low. And if we compare this to early March 2021, you can see the Radon 7 had a median price of roughly $900. So they gave it a higher value score back then. For some reason, the Radon 7 cards have gone up in price. Maybe there's a small shortage of Radon 7 cards. For whatever reason, there's like a peaked interest in them. Maybe they're better for mining. Who knows? I don't know much about mining. I haven't ever done it before, but you never know. I mean, this indicates that there are, shifts in preference for certain cards, especially when you're in a market that is saturated with miners as much as it is gamers. Now, a few cards that are doing quite well right now are the GTX 960. This one surprised me a lot. So 960 prices have come down to about $100. This still isn't what I would call a good price with respect to how things used to be pre-mining craze, pre-silicon shortage, etc. But this is much better than it used to be. You see the value is quite high here, again, with respect to other cards in this chart whose data was gathered around the same time, around not mid-August, but early August 2021. The R9 290, I believe this was still a good value in March. You can see the median price is around $150. That gives us a value score of 20, almost 25. And then the R9 Fury for around $200 is also a great value at 24. Now again, I'm not saying these values would have always been great. Obviously, a year or two ago, things were much different. And a year or two ago, I wouldn't have told you that a GTX 960 for $100 was a great deal. But with respect to other cards in this chart for data gathered in this snapshot of time, it's not bad. If you have to buy a card, consider that if you're only worried about value. Now, you see a lot of cards as of August 2021 are kind of in the middle here. They're all labeled like a yellow color, more or less, maybe a light shade of yellow or a slight shade of green. Some cards are okay deals. The RX 470 is not bad at 18. The GTX 1070 Ti at $400. I mean, that's still, geez, it feels weird saying this is a okay deal. But again, with respect to other prices and other value propositions out there at this current time, 1070 Ti for $400 isn't awful. And then you have some that are kind of just, they're not very good. Like GTX 1050, $150. I would say that anything under 15 you just shouldn't look at all if you consider yourself a value person. The R9 380X again still looking pretty good at 20. We've got the GTX 960, of course. The 970 even it's getting there, about $200. That's the median price I've found. It gives you a value of 18, and then the GTX 950 for about $100. 19, that's pretty good, right? Now, if you stuck around this far in the video, I think you're in for a treat because I prepared a few different scatter plots, a few different graphs that will really help you visualize what all these numbers mean in these charts, with the exception, again, of the normal distribution data, which is off to the right in each, that I'm saving for the very end. So here we go. So this plot ranks value against score. Now, the score is the median 3D Mark time SPY score, so we expect the more powerful cards will be placed further to the right along the x-axis, and the better value cards will rank higher up along the y-axis. So some of the worst value cards, like this Titan here, it's obviously a really bad value. It's actually the worst value, if that's the only metric we're ranking here. And then it's also not really a great performer. It's not a great score. It's an older card, so that's why it's positioned a bit further to the left. Now, by comparison, the Titan V is still a very bad value. It's actually only slightly better in terms of value than the Titan, relatively speaking, but it is a much more powerful card, and that's why it's positioned a bit further to the right. Ideally, you want something positioned up here, but not too far to the left if you're worried about higher in-game resolutions and settings and things like that. So the 3060 Ti is a really great sweet spot. So is the GTX 1650 Super. The 1660 Super is really great as well. And then we have the more powerful cards that are much more recent as well, like the RTX 3070, RX 6800, 6800 XT, and 3080. Couple cards that are not necessarily good values, but that are really powerful are the 6900 XT and 3090. Again, this is at MSRP, okay? So take what you're seeing here with a grain of salt. This ideally is what we'd be dealing with, and we were dealing with this more or less a few years ago. Now, we're about to change charts, and we're going to keep the same X and Y variables, right? The scale's going to slightly change on the Y-axis. I tried to keep it as similar as possible, but it does change just a tad. I'm going to move my camera out of the way here so you can see what happens. So we've got the max Y score over here is 35 at MSRP, and this is early 2021. Again, it says April, but this was actually, most of this was gathered in early March, if I recall correctly. So you can see the general trend here. A lot of these cards are much worse values given their current, or what were current at the time, eBay sale prices. We have pretty much every card should be the same, at the same location on the x-axis. So take this 3090 for example. It's just in front of the 20,000 score mark, and if we switch on over, you can see it's still in the same position on the x-axis, but it has dropped considerably on the y-axis because, again, we're taking into account actual sale prices over MSRP, and since the sale prices are higher, the resulting value is lower because the sale price is in the denominator of each of these ratios. Now you can see I included this trend line here, and it's on all three of these charts I'm going to show you, along with the equation. The slope in this case is positive, y-intercept of 12.3 or so. This suggests that there is a positive relationship between value and score. So the newer cards are typically going to be better values, right? But also the more powerful cards are going to be better values. Now that's kind of a trade-off, right? Because newer cards are typically also more powerful. So that's one of the reasons why the slope would be positive. But an interesting note is that when we take into account eBay sale prices in early 2021, that slope shifts to a negative one. So the relationship between value and score is negative. It's inversely proportional. So as value increases, score tends to decrease, or conversely, as score tends to increase, value tends to decrease. Now this works twofold, again, because these older cards are usually going to be a bit cheaper if they're 2-3 generations old. They'll still be cheaper than what they sold for at MSRP, even in this kind of market. So for example, the GTX 950 here has a value of 18, 19 or so, but if you look at MSRP, that 950 is somewhere. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is, 950, right? So the GTX 950 actually was lower at the MSRP chart and is higher here, but that's because the 950 is selling for less now than it was at MSRP. So that's another explanation for why this trend line is negative. Now I want to show you August 2021 because this is also very interesting. So kind of keep a snapshot of this in mind, and we're going to switch now. Check that out. You see how everything shifted up. So very, very obvious, and I made sure the y-axis was the same here. I'm going to take my camera off screen. So we've got y-axis up to 30 starting at 0. I'm going to switch back to earlier in 2021. You can see, look at that massive shift downward the further back we look. So this is definitely clear evidence that cards across the board are becoming better values, and the only change, because we didn't change score, the only variable changing here is the price. So prices are coming down because, again, price is in the denominator. That is why the value is going up the later we look. And in this case, August 2021 is pretty much present time. That is why these are all positioned higher on this chart. So that's really good news. I want to look at some cards in particular. Let's see what the change was. Some of these actually went down in value, and I think that, again, just depends on the trend. So for example, the Radeon 7 graphics card was somewhere in here, right in the middle, and then you can see if we switch to August, it actually dropped. It fell way below the trend line. And again, this could have to do with a number of things. I don't know if Radeon 7s are particularly great mining cards. They weren't particularly great value gaming cards when they first came out. But there's just, maybe there are just few of them in circulation, or maybe there's a ton of people who are suddenly interested in them. So the price was driven up, and as a result, the plot here was pushed down much lower along the y-axis. Another few interesting observations. You can see the R9 380 and the R9 Fury X were actually really great value cards, relatively speaking. Again, with respect to these other values here at this point in time, back in, again, March or so, 2021. But then if we transition to August, they suddenly kind of blend back in a bit. The 380X actually is nowhere near as good a value as it used to be. It's around 20 now, right here, if you can see my cursor. And the R9 Fury is still pretty good. but the R9 Fury X, which was one of the two that was way up here, is much lower as well. I doubt that our video back then was the sole reason why these dropped. But it could have played a part, so it's kind of interesting. Now, there are a few cards in these two charts that didn't change price at all, which means that their positions on these plots didn't change either. For example, the original Titan here did not move at all between early 2021, and you can't see it, it's kind of blocked by whatever this card is, looks like a 1650 or something, and here, right? It's not moving. It's the same position. And there are a few cards like that. I noticed that the GTX 750 Ti as well didn't change in price, so that's why it doesn't move here. But a lot of other cards did definitely shift upward along the y-axis, suggesting that value has definitely increased overall. Another interesting note here, the trend line for August is starting to flatten out. The slope is now negative 0.0002, whereas before it was negative 0.0003. So that mathematically explains why the slope is a little flatter. It's not as steep, but we would expect in an ideal market, again, for this slope to be positive because of the natural aging of tech and how newer tech tends to be more valuable, barring any crazy amount of inflation between snapshots. So we've obviously got quite a ways to go. Yes, prices have decreased. That has resulted in higher values across the board with few exceptions, but we're far from ideal. And we won't get there until you have an equilibrium of supply and demand, in the sense that you don't have this disconnect between how much supply is being supplied, how many cards are being produced, and how many people are hoarding cards, taking advantage of wholesale opportunities and pawning off individual pallets and things on eBay, etc. It's ridiculous what is happening now, but the only reason it is happening is because we don't have enough of the raw supply on the market to meet the demand from miners and gamers. And that brings us to this chart right here. We're going to talk about normal distributions. I'm not going to explain what this is in detail. I'm not going to run through. This is not a statistics course. I don't intend for it to be. Just know that values further to the right, we'll keep it super simple here, are better. They're better values. They're the ones that you want to look out for. Sometimes 2-3 standard deviations outside the mean, positive standard deviations, which is good in this case. So I'm going to switch to this version of the chart, which I denoted. I'm going to get rid of my camera. There we go. Okay, so further to the left here, then these are bad. You don't want to buy cards further along this side of the curve. So we have GT710. This one's no good. Titan RTX at this point in August, no good. Radeon 7, for whatever reason, that became a really bad deal. Same with the Titan. Cards that are not great. I mean, you're not like... It's not the worst deal in the world, but it is definitely not spectacular with respect to other cards in this list. RTX 3090, RTX 3080, GT 1030 if you want an ultra budget card. I mean, at least you know this one's better than the GT 710 at this point in time. You can find them for a price similar to what we have listed. And then we have the original Titan. Now, moving over here, we have the deals that are, they're okay. I mean, they're not bad, but they're not super good either. You really only want to pick something from this list if you are not okay with any of the cards here to the far right. So something like a GTX 1650 Super, 1660 Super, 1660 Ti, R9 390, RTX 2080 Super. This is going to be one of the more powerful cards in this this section of the chart. They're all right. You know, again, if you don't want any of these over here, buy one of these if you have to buy something. Like, again, I'm not encouraging anyone buy anything right now, but if you absolutely must buy something and none of these will do it for you, maybe you want something powerful like a 2080 Super, I've noticed that these prices have come down quite a bit. They're still not great values, again, with respect to what we would have expected maybe a year or two ago, but compared to other cards in this list at this point in time on eBay, they are not too bad. Now, some of the best cards you can find right now from a value perspective, again, just in this time period, we're not comparing to previous prices and previous eras of this graphics card market. The R9 380X is a really good one still. The GTX 960 is a really good one still, especially if you can find the 4 gig variant. R9 290s are still really good. These will run pretty hot, so be prepared. And then R9 Furies as well. Again, older card, but it packs a decent punch for the price it's going for on eBay, relatively speaking. So I hope this video has shed a bit of light into the current state of graphics card prices in mid-2021. I would say, with very few exceptions, yes, graphics card prices in the used market have definitely come down somewhere in the realm of 20 to 30, maybe 35%. And that is, I would say, substantial. I mean, compared to what we were dealing with in February, March, this is definitely a breath of fresh air, but it's not fresh to the point where I'm like, go out and buy things. You know, these prices are still elevated. If you told me they were going to be this expensive a year ago, or well, maybe a bit further back than that, I would have said, no way, those are ripoffs. But compared to what we were dealing with earlier in the year, these prices are definitely headed in the right direction. I just realized I put Ossist. No idea what Ossist is. Oh, that is cringe. Sorry about that. It probably says Ossist up here too, because I think I copied and pasted it. Oh no, it says April. Okay, yeah. So I just typoed the August thing. There we go. So yeah, the other thing I wanted to say that I did mention earlier is that this snapshot, these prices are only taking into account U.S. sales. If a card was sold from Germany or from Canada, wherever, those markets are different. They have different access to cards, especially in their local markets. And even if they're shipping internationally, I just didn't want to consider them. I think it's only fair to look within our country because we have different rules to play by in a lot of cases, different supply amounts to play with, and different demand even as well. So if you live in the US and you thought this data was super interesting and helpful, let me know in the comment section below. Also, by giving this one a thumbs up, I would appreciate that. Even if you're international and you like seeing the data juxtaposed, that feedback would be appreciated. If you thought it was too much, if you thought it was just like all thrown at you at once or it was disorganized, whatever, you can also comment that down below. It's okay. I didn't mean for this to be super professional. The presentation was just kind of supposed to be off the cuff and more like, oh, look, I just gathered this data. Let's go look through it together. Like that's what I was going for. But hopefully the charts at least helped out a bit, maybe help you visualize the things you were seeing, the scatter plots at least. Hopefully that helped you grasp what is being presented here. It's easier for me to understand it because I'm the one that made the charts, but I can understand how, just a bunch of numbers can seem like a bit much. I've been through it in school. I know what that's like. Anyway, again, if you liked the video, thumbs up. I'd appreciate the feedback. Subscribe if you haven't already. That would be cool. Join our public Discord server. It is linked below. Check out our cleaning and troubleshooting gear and stay tuned for the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.